Well, Nigel, we continue this conversation. Now, there is some reshuffling as it relates to education, right? And
Right.
where they have Minister Kay Connie is now doing, I think it's economic affairs. That's what she's that's where they've put her. What are your thoughts about that and the way the ministries seem to be broken down into two? What are your general thoughts about that?
Well, when I first heard that that was the case, I was really puzzled and wondered what really is going on because it indicates that one, there is definitely a crisis in governance in Barbados, and two, that there appears to be no clear um, vision of the future of Barbados or a vision for the ministry and its role in the development of Barbados. So I think that it's confusing, to say the least. It is confusing.
Mm-hmm. I see Miss Rose Corbin is here as well. She's presently in the studio. Her camera is off, but let me just welcome her to the Marcia Week show. Welcome, Mrs. Corbin. Good to see you tonight.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
Mrs. Collins.
Pardon
Yes.
me. Thank you both. Thanks for the welcome.
Yes, ma'am. And we are here talking about this cabinet reshuffle, and we are talking about education. And so this is a very strong area for you, an area of deep concern, and you're one of those who felt that I think at some point that something needed to be done with Kay McConney. It's now happening. What are your thoughts about this reshuffling as it relates to the area of education?
Thank you, Marcia. I did indicate to you when we were told that we were going to have the panelists in tonight to discuss these matters that I would reserve my comments to education. But briefly, before I do, what I would have observed over yesterday when the was it yesterday, yes, when the news came of the reshuffling,
Mm-hmm.
two scenarios came to mind that I would have grown up with, and I believe, and I greet you, loyal sons and daughters all. Good evening, firm craftsmen of her faith. And Marcia, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I believe that Nigel would be. I grew up hearing my grandmother saying that when a crapo, and my people out there will know what's a crapo. You know what's a crapo, Marcia?
No.
A crapo is a big frog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So get the picture. I grew up hearing my grandmother saying, oh, he or she behaves like a crapo. And how does the crapo behave when cornered? According to my grandmother and the fable here, the local fable, when cornered, a crapo, pardon the vernacular, I'm not being disgusting, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
just recalling what I've been told. A crapo raises his leg and pee in your eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Nigel? And
Indeed.
that is
Yes.
what
Yes.
I
Yes.
saw today, yesterday. I'm cornered, I'm cornered, I'm going to pee in your eye. And what I saw also yesterday was the mashing up of the cricket game, right, Nigel? And again, in the local scenario, we
Hmm.
always hear that game done. If the
Yeah.
game isn't going your way, if cricket isn't going your way, and
You
you
pull up the
own the
stump.
ball, and you own the bat, and you own the stumps, you
Yes.
rip them up, you take them up, game done. And
Yeah.
if you could, you would take the pitch with you. And if you start another game, if you start another game
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You would choose those persons
Yeah.
who played the game your way, who
Mhm.
allowed you to score the runs. And that is what we have been seeing, but it has been made more visible over the last 24 hours, 48 hours, based with this reshuffling. And it was interesting, Marcia, hearing the Honorable Senator Walters speaking. He was looking at my notes here, and I
Mhm.
had written big, rewarding Kim McConney for or lack of or for non-performance, for
Mhm.
mashing up the Ministry of Education. And I know persons will be coming for me, but I have been in education since 1974. So I would have come under several ministers of education as well as chief education officer.
Mhm.
And I must, and I've been doing my research, whenever there seems to be a BLP government, education gets mashed up. Nothing seems to work in education. And we could look when the now Prime Minister was Minister of Education, the failed edutech.
Yes.
We can look also now when she became Prime Minister, her choice as Minister of Education in 2018. We had Sancher Bradshaw, whom I was told was petulant, reluctant to take up that ministry. Needless to say, I speak empathetically that around that time or soon thereafter, she was unwell, but we were told that she was a reluctant minister of education. And then we brought in Kim McConney. And as you know, I always lauded Miss McConney for what I knew about her and my interaction and engagement with her when she was the manager of the youth entrepreneurial scheme. Yes. And many persons told me that I was too soft, but I gave time. And then you would hear me thereafter when we continue to get all the poor performance, the non-performance, um, the how the education was being treated. You then heard me saying, look, Prime Minister, retire her. She should resign. Now we are seeing here, Marcia, Nigel, and listeners, that she's being rewarded again. Remember when she was brought in as senator, she was given a ministry.
Yeah.
And apparently she was not good or effective, not let me say good, as effective as she should have been. And my frustration is that the Ministry of Education continues to be a dumping ground.
Yes.
So
Because
you
of
dump.
what they're doing. Yeah.
Yes, so you dump her there because then you can blame the chief, you can teachers will be blamed. So dump in the Ministry of Education, and we know what has or has not happened under the good lady's tenure as
Yeah.
Minister of Education. Now we are seeing, Marcia, and Senator Walters spoke of it. The Ministry of Education is no longer called the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. Counter the Bajan expression, lo and behold, unbeknownst to us, and I keep track of these things. The Prime Minister, in announcing the reshuffle, drop it like it hot on us, too hot for us to catch or note what was going on. We learned that it is now called the Ministry of Educational Transformation. What in help me fill in the blank spaces? What does that mean?
Yeah. But
Educational
Rose, yeah,
transformation.
let me just because we are running behind, and I'm going to go extra half hour tonight, so everybody going to get in what they have to say. But
Yes,
you
please.
hold the thought right there, and let me just bring Shaquani in, and because we had a little issue there at the top of the show, so let me bring her in, but don't lose your point, because you're gonna get a chance to continue, Mrs. Corbin. I just want to bring her in, and I know she has some
Yes,
thoughts
please.
on education, and then I go back to you. Right, Shaquani. Good to
Yes,
have.
good evening, everyone.
Yes, good to see you.
You know, right.
Yes, I'm
Good night.
sure.
Good night.
Yes, I'm sure you are listening to this conversation,
Yes.
and I have up on the screen Mrs. Tweedy, and Mrs. Tweedy is actually from the cartoon Chicken Run, and I don't know if anybody know who Mrs. Tweedy is, and who is Mrs. Tweedy, and you try to figure out who is this minister is Mrs. Tweedy. But but let's go to, what are your thoughts on this education, the reshuffling in the education, Ministry of Education? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it was long awaiting for her to be removed, mainly because we were constantly seeing a lot of failing on her part. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just talking about personal failing, but statements like school is ready, we're on track to open, first day of school, schools are not ready, parents have to go back and pick up children, environmental problems, projects still going on, open wells, which we know are very, very dangerous. So over and over, we have seen situations where it seemed like the minister at that time was not looking over or on top of her ministry. And at that, it allowed the children who were going to school to be in a position where they were out of school for long periods of time. Remember last semester, Grantley Adams, their school, their students were home for almost a whole semester. And there
Mm-hmm.
are no catching back up. So even though it seems like it was not necessary, it was necessary to remove her. She was not doing her job. And by not doing her job, she has impacted a whole generation that had to go to school under her. And we will now continue to see the fallout as we are struggling with a high loss of literacy in Barbados, where we have a big number of children who are not able to read. And I am going to, when you think about children doing online learning, that
Yeah.
is really impacting them and how they're learning to read. We have children who log on to online learning, turn off the cameras, and go outside. Teachers are not able to keep up with them. So when you have situations where children have to be at home for long periods of time doing online learning, it's not conducive for them. Something as simple as scheduling repairs to be for the school could have been done earlier instead of running into when school is starting. Right? So you put a video up.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's gonna play without the audio. Yeah,
Oh,
just yeah, continue for another minute, and then I'm gonna go back to Rose and then to Nigel.
okay, all right, no problem. On my part, I'm not seeing the video. Oh, I'm now seeing the video.
Hmm. Yes, just continue speaking unless you done?
No, 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 I'm not done. And on
Yeah.
I found that under her leadership, we had a huge number of children fighting. We had a huge number of people coming into the school without getting appropriate access, and then they're going back to tightening security. What does that really mean? How did they even get into the school in the first place? I believe that if something is your ministry, you need to be on top of things like that, especially when you have children at risk. When you put children in a position to be potentially harmed, you are putting them at risk. There's so many things where she misstepped, and I feel like she should have been removed every sense. I
Mhm.
do not know if the new minister what he will have in plan, but I hope he's able to get his app, well, the app that she left back for him to fix together very quickly, because or not we will have children graduating, leaving school, being impacted with what she left.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. And it's good to hear a young person's perspective. And I really made sure that we had them on here tonight. But, Rose, back to what you were saying, a while ago of not knowing what is the ministry. I mean, Shaquani is saying the new minister of education. But is there really a minister of education? Just following from what you were saying.
From what I, from where I am, I don't think that we no longer have a Ministry of Education. And I would like the Prime Minister and the replacement um, Minister Blackman to explain to us. I think we need to know education for me is the gem of the in the crown. It is the gem, it's the prized gem. I told my husband it's like what the Taj Mahal is to India. And we have been treating it so badly. We cannot be so negligent and ad hoc with education. What do we mean by educational transformation? Is this just another handle for all the narrative and the rhetoric associated with education reform that has failed? Or is this just a stopgap for people to ride out their time, keep people comfortable so that they can get their little pension as they're doing with Kim McConney, shuffling her all around? And we are putting people to hold down some places so we can rally out until when elections are called due 8 years, within 8 years from 2018, so that persons could get their pension. But don't mess with my education. Don't mess with the heartbeat of the nation. Don't mess with it. Please explain to me if the other sections of Barbados don't want the explanation. Someone explain to me who would have dedicated 51 years of my life in retirement and still doing it. What do you mean by the Ministry of Educational Transformation? And honestly, I thought that MP Sandra Husbands would have been handed over the entire ministry as she was brought over from Foreign Affairs to take up I ain't too sure what ministry within the Ministry of Education, what portfolio within the Ministry of Education, the former, may I say, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. I think she was more responsible for the the vocational training. And I was anticipating when I heard that Kim McConney was relieved and are asked to resign or be removed fully from any ministry. I thought that Sandra Husbands would have been given the ministerial position for the Ministry of Education. Now, again, they have just given her a fancy title, Training and Tertiary Education. What's that? Identify for me the entities that exists within training and tertiary education. How many are there? What is the reach? What is her mandate? I do not like the messing with education. You're not messing with technology. You're messing with minds. You're
Yes.
messing with the future. You're messing with the present, because our children within the school system are not waiting for a future down there. Education is enabling their present
Mm-hmm.
to transition into their future. I'm
Into the
not
future. Yes.
satisfied with the handling of education. The young gentleman, pardon me, um, Honorable Chad Blackman, he seems to have a very impressive background as a diplomat and ambassador.
Before you go there, Mrs. Corbin, let
Yes,
me just
please.
ask Nigel. Nigel, you know, you're listening about, you know, all of what we're talking about tonight. You yourself, at some point, you know, you've been in the teaching profession. When you hear this minister of education transformation, and then you have Sandra Husbands, who is now in charge of tertiary something something. Does it say to you that there is a ministry of education? Do you um what I myself am confused.
Well, like Mrs. Corbin and yourself and everyone else, I am confused because I really cannot understand. I don't understand what really is happening in the Ministry of Education, because you see, for me, the Ministry of Education has a very significant role to play in the social construction and nation building in any nation. And therefore, to be confused and to be misguided and to be just playing political games with such an important ministry is not good for the development of the nation, or in this case, for the development of Barbados. And it says to me that clearly the government does not have a clearly defined philosophy of education.
Mm-hmm.
The government does not have a vision of the future of Barbados, and they do not understand the significance and the role of education in social construction and nation building. For example, right now, we are going through a very difficult time in terms of crime and violence in Barbados and in the school system as well.
Yes.
Okay? And one would think that knowing the significance of education and the role that it can play in character development and nation building, one would have thought that the government would be more careful and more circumspect in what it is doing to the Ministry of Education. Okay, so and to divide the ministry like that, it is a recipe for confusion and destruction.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Nigel. Let me just I tell you, we are all here tonight. We're all here tonight. I'm just gonna bring Maxine McClean in. And as much as this topic of education is something that I would like us to, I'm hoping that we can get back to. I want to kind of look at some of the other things that have occurred, you know, between yesterday and today. The reshuffling, and then the prime minister is making an announcement that she would not be the person doing the budget speech. And I want to welcome former Senator Maxine McClean, and I think it would be you'll be the right person to ask this question. What is that saying to the country? the prime minister is saying, I'm not going to be giving I won't do the budget speech. We hardly saw her. I think somebody glimpsed her outside the parliament, but well, I didn't see her sitting. I might be wrong. Sitting inside, when the estimates. I didn't see her in there. And now we're being told she's not going to give the budget speech. As a former senator, what is that saying to the people of Barbados, in your opinion? Good night, Miss McClean. You're
Good
muted.
night.
You're
Yeah.
muted, Miss McClean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good night. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're
Yes,
hearing
Yes.
you.
Well, it just says to me that one more time, the Minister of Finance, because the Prime Minister, in presenting a budget speech, will be presenting in her responsibility, her capacity as Minister of Finance, that she has decided that maybe the job is too big for her in terms of presenting it. And the reason I say that is that on no occasion, from my observation, since the Prime Minister has been Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, has she generally tackled tough economic issues in terms of explaining them and so on. If I remember correctly, there might have been a time during her tenure as Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, that we did not have a budget. If I am wrong, somebody can correct me.
Yes, that's correct.
We did not have a budget. Last year, the Prime Minister was in for a major shock. I don't believe neither the Prime Minister nor her parliamentary colleagues expected the kind of incisive, in-depth, highly analytical presentation of the leader of the opposition. It is not my words, but somebody suggested to me that maybe she's hiding from the leader of the opposition. But I also say this, in all that we heard yesterday, slipped into the conversation and the comments made by the Prime Minister in relation to what I see to be a forced reshuffle, and I can come back to that. The Prime Minister spoke of Berth 3, a third IMF arrangement. And I can't, because I would probably get cut if you had a 10-second delay, repeat how people describe what that is going to do to Barbadians. But the expectation is that with all that we know in terms of borrowing, etc., the budget will have some very tough or bad news for Bajans. And as I heard somebody suggest earlier, based again on the evidence, the Prime Minister typically delegates bad news to different, she doesn't become the bearer of bad news. So somebody else will be delegated the responsibility. And so I also believe that the Prime Minister is showing fatigue in terms of domestic matters. Because if we want to be honest and fair, and I can substantiate anything I say, the Prime Minister has found herself playing musical chairs with her ministers. If you dissect ministry by ministry, you would realize that there are no stellar accomplishments. There are substantial failures. The Prime Minister came in, she talked about, I'm trying to remember the terms that were spelled. Let me first use the two that I remember. She talked about deconstructing and reconstructing. And I think that Rose did an excellent job in showing how she has deconstructed for the second time. In this case, the Ministry of Education. And I would say to you, we no longer have a Ministry of Education. We have two ministries which will carry out some of the functions of a Ministry of Education. And if you go to the Education Act, it talks about providing an integrated education and all of that, but we can come back to that later. Basically, I think the Prime Minister is a person who gets enthused and excited by ideas, maybe generated by herself, maybe an amalgam of ideas from others, and she runs with them, but there is a lack of in-depth, serious analysis. I'll give you an example. And I was reading as I was listening earlier. I went to look, and this was an article of February the 4th, 2022 News. academic shift. This was the opening of Parliament after the last election. And the president is given a throne speech to read, which is essentially the plan, an element of let's say a strategic plan or the plans of the government. And it says academic shift, Education Act to be replaced. President announces major changes in education. I'll quickly read a couple lines here because some of it has fallen through the window. Barbados' education system is in for a major shakeup. Marking the first sitting of Parliament as a Republic state, President of Barbados, Her Excellency the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason, announced plans to replace the Education Act of 1983 during the President's address at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Center today. The President said that the new legislation will be more suited for modern developments in the educational system. Education will be more focused on problem solving, critical thinking, and lifelong learning, the President read. I would have assumed that that was very much a part of education from the time I was a child. And I left secondary school in 1974. I left primary school in 1966, the year we became independent. So President Dame Sandra Mason declared the Barbados Secondary School examination commonly known as 11 plus to be abolished and replaced with a middle school system, etc., etc. So that is supportive of what we've seen manifested: chaos and confusion. Unfortunately, it does not only characterize education. And if I can continue a bit more, I want to say something about the Marsha Cattle ministry and the movement. And I talked about musical chairs. Marsha Cattle, former Minister of Economic Affairs and Investment, former minister, now that she's resigned, of Minister of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, a ministry called MIST. And it so happened, by some divine order, I was in Parliament yesterday with a number of women, including Shaquani, from the Democratic Labour Party to support our political lead and lead of the opposition. And that ministry was supposed to have been presented after lunch, the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology. But in my preparation, because I like to read up on these things, and as I said to you, on this show, that if I could be of any help to the senators and to the leader of the opposition, I would. So I do read. I will say this, Marcia, my evaluation is, and I use the word chaos again, like the Ministry of Education, MIST is a mystery. It is confusion. And so I don't know if for the second time, Minister Cattle, she's one of the people I thought was more intellectually sound of her cabinet colleagues, but from all that I hear, I don't know about her people's skills, etc. And so while I observe that, I know what it takes to run a ministry. But all I can tell you, if you go and dissect the components of that ministry, if you look at BIDC, which calls itself Export Barbados now, and we can go through them, one of the critical things that they were responsible for is this whole issue of the whole question of technology and transformation, in a digital environment and so on. We know of all the chaos that we've had across government ministries with hacking and cyber attacks and all of these things. Now, so my concern is that I've heard what the former Minister Cattle said, and that may very well be an important part of her decision. But I would like to know, and I really wanted to hear, because of all that I had garnered in my intelligence gathering, I would have wanted to hear from the public officers, because they have brought the public officers, and to hear from the minister herself, what were the accomplishments of that ministry and what were the plans. Now, I'll finish by saying this. As I looked in the musical chairs that happened, Kay McConney was Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, which is basically where Minister Cattle went in the second iteration as a minister. She didn't work well. It didn't work out there because her technological innovations weren't very smart. We didn't see them. So then she became Minister of Education, Technology, and Vocational Training. And what did we have? Rose talked about it. I don't have to repeat it, but I can tell you chaos again. And now she is going to where Marsha Cattle was in the first iteration, to the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment, which is part of the behemoth that constitutes the Prime Minister's portfolios. So all I can tell you is, in conclusion, that the Prime Minister was forced, as far as I can see, to make changes. I am not sure if, in the case of former Minister Cattle, that she jumped before she was pushed. I think that in the case of Kay McConnell, she was pulled out of the ministry after, of course, demonstrating that in two ministries she really had nothing much to show. And I suspect that it will be business as usual when she goes to her third ministry. Confusion, chaos, a lot of long talk, many hands at work, but the flip side of that is too many cooks spoil the broth, and we will have deconstruction with no construction.
Correct, correct. Thank you so much, Miss McClean. Wow, this panel is on fire tonight. Thank you all so much. We want to open up the phone lines and for persons to call in, and I'm seeing Mr. Victor Lewis is there as well, and so I'm going to get his input while I wait on the calls. But just before that, let me just say that who Mrs. Tweedy is. Mrs. Tweedy was in the movie, the cartoon movie Chicken Run. And she was a chicken farmer, but she was a terrifying figure because she kept the chickens in tiny stalls. She terrorized them and eventually started killing them for meat. Right? So here again, she kept the chicken in tiny stalls. She terrorized them. She was supposed to, she's a chicken farmer, right? But she was terrifying to the chickens that were under her care. And I wonder who would be Mrs. Tweedy in this whole cabinet reshuffle. Let me go to Mr. Lewis while we wait on a caller. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis. Good night. Good to see you.
Good night and wonderful night to the loyal opposition. Two chickens were very courageous and managed to jump ship and run.
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah.
What is happening now? What is happening in government is not surprising to me at all because we would have talked about the bigotry, the despotic behavior that we would have heard from our former leader, about this despotism that exists. Clearly, her style of leadership suggests to me that, as we would have said on Sunday night, when Blind Murray was around, he spoke relative to all these fancy words, and according to Maxine just now, a lot of long talk that didn't mean nothing. So we hear a lot of fancy words, about ideas, the ideas form, a lot of fancy words, and at the end of the day, what? When I look at that picture that was presented where we saw the Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister, the representative for St. Joseph, I think there, and two others. When you look at the body language of these individuals, just look at the body language. If you can bring that picture up and just look at the body language. What the body language say to me is not a happy camp.
Yes.
Something serious
Dave
is going on.
put up that picture for us,
Yeah.
Dave.
Yes.
And I do have a caller, but
Yeah.
I'll just go on for another minute and I bring the caller in. Yeah.
Just look at the body language. The body language says a whole lot. How could people be in such a happy camp and people have that kind of, body language being displayed? Something is seriously wrong, and it is clearly evident now that London Bridge is falling down.
Yeah. Yes. Dave is looking for that picture for you. Let me just go to the caller and then we're gonna come right back. Caller, good night.
Hi, good night, Marcia. Good night to my loyal opposition, and good night to those that are online. Good night to
Good night.
candidate and hopeful soon MP, Miss Shaquani Hunte, and all the rest. Good night to all. I want to say that I fully agree with what I have heard thus far from both Miss Rose Corbin, who I delightfully enjoyed her delivery, and my sister comrade Maxine McClean thus far, the two learned gentlemen there. I I am, and Marcia, you of course are amazing as always. Um, I can't fathom understand, and I would like to ask former Maxine McClean a question. When it comes to parliamentary procedure, um, is there a rule that when one wants to speak and they have a right to speak, isn't there a rule against others crossing while one is speaking? And isn't there a further rule to kind of mute the leader, the person in the chair that is leading the house, that they should be, let's just say, neutral and not seem to give the suggestion that they are being one-sided if they choose to interject?
Generally, you're not supposed to speak. A member of the House or Senate is supposed to speak in silence. Now, that in reality does not happen. However, two things. One, the leader of government business, whether in the Senate or House, should be able to control those persons, and the leader of the opposition, that person, if there are multiple persons, should be able to do the same. I think part of what you might be referring to is in the arrangement in the House now for the estimates. It is in a committee of supply, so you have a chairman of committees. Yeah. Again, the chairman is expected to do so, but I think what you may find, and I was not a member of the House, so I would have to scrutinize the standing orders of the House. Because we don't debate in the same way in the Senate, this particular piece of legislation, the appropriations bill. But I think it is expected that the person as a chair would be as neutral as possible. And there's something that bothers me, because they tell you you're not supposed to hear size. In other words, you're speaking through the chair to the public and to your colleague MPs or fellow senators. And so you're not supposed to be hearing and responding to them. But the reality is, if you have a barrage of speaking, noise, and so on, it disturbs your train of thought. And therefore, a decent chair, a responsible chair, and a chair who is trying to be as objective and neutral as possible will ask those people to stop. Now, if I were doing that, my way was saying is, Mr. President or Madam Chair, or whatever, Madam President, can you assist me in asking these people to be quiet, because it is disturbing me. It is preventing me from speaking sensibly, because it's disturbing my thoughts. But I think unfortunately people, I don't like what I've been seeing in the House, whether it is the acting president, the chair, the speaker. Sorry, I'm confusing the two places. The speaker, the deputy speaker, or the chairman of committees. In many ways, they come across as biased in a lot of instances. And what makes it worse is that they should appreciate that you have 28 persons sitting on the other side in theory, because you don't ever see all of them in there at any one time. You have one person. And I think that in the interest of fairness, those kind of things should be considered. But above all things, what I can say, and I take my hat off to the leader of the opposition, he handles himself well. I think because of his years as a
he does
attorney and a highly intellectual person.
I would just one small thing, Marcia, please.
Wait, yes. Do you have anything? Because tonight we've opened up the lines to talk about the reshuffling, etc. And you just have another minute or so. So in your last minute, what do what are your thoughts about the reshuffling, sir?
Okay. My thoughts basically are the thoughts of everybody else. I think it's a musical chairs. I think it is a way to either kind of dim the focus on what we need to be focusing on that's presently going on in the country. And as to what happened to Senator Crystal Haynes, I think it is a despotic act as to try to mimic democracy being played out even in the Senate, because everybody has a right to speak. their truth. Everybody has a right to assembly. Even with me, when I was on the calling program, I was told that I have no right to question the Attorney General by a well-known moderator. I wonder if he had lost his screws, because I have every right to question anyone with pertinent questions pertaining to our society. So yes, Marcia, I think that this turn of events is showing the instability in this current administration, and by extension, it is an instability in society, and people are beginning to slowly open their eyes. But we must retain, as the law opposition, that democracy rules over despotism. And I thank you and good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, caller. Dave, if you could, Mr. Lewis was asking for that picture. It's actually a video, but I think you had paused it, where they.
Dave, Mr.
Yeah.
Lewis was
Okay.
asking
He
for that
has his-
picture.
He has
It's a
his
video, but I think
1 second, guys.
there.
The caller,
Mr. Lewis was asking for that picture. He has this video, but I think 1 second, guys.
Not that one.
not this picture. The picture
The
with,
one
with all
The five
four,
individuals.
yeah, the 4 individuals.
Five.
There.
There were
Yeah,
five
but
of them.
continue what you were saying, Mr. Lewis. Continue your thoughts while we wait on another caller. Guys, the number is 236-7000. And we would like to hear from you. We've put this time together for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, this is a picture here. Go
Right.
ahead, Mr. Lewis.
When you do an analysis of that photo, right? To
Mhm.
begin with, apart from the representative for St. Joseph, he looks like that most of the time. So you need know, yes, he looks like that most of the time. Whenever you see him, let's look at the cheeks. The cheeks gives you the impression that he is smiling. So don't get fooled by that. So when you start doing analysis of the picture, because you're investigating now, you're just not listening to words. You're looking at the body language. And the body language here is key. And that body language clearly tells me that those folks are in trouble.
Yeah. Something is definitely off, and our little comedic spin on it. You can say who is who. I'm not saying it, but you have Miss Piggy. You have Guy Smiley. There's another character. You have what's this one here? Garfield the cat. Who's a little lazy, just sleeps around, doesn't do anything. And you have Ursula, okay? Ursula. Am I pronouncing that right, Shaquani? Ursula. Ursula. And we have Ursula. So you can determine who they are. Nigel, we haven't heard anything much from you. We haven't heard in the last couple of minutes. I know you were having some technical issues. Is there anything you want to, anybody said you want to contribute at this time?
Yes, but with reference to the behavior of the parliamentarians in Parliament, especially when the leader of the opposition is speaking, I think it is very disrespectful, and it demonstrates the lack of training, in my estimation, because we are taught as children, whenever someone is speaking, you shut up and you listen. You do not interrupt. It is impolite to interrupt or disturb someone who is speaking. And for that level of behavior to be going on in the highest, at the highest level in the governance of Barbados and in national life, for parliamentarians to be behaving like that, for me, constitutes hooliganism. They're behaving like hooligans in Parliament, and that is not a good example for the young people. It's not a good example, okay? And clearly, I am saying that governance in Barbados is in a deep crisis, and something has to be done to rescue the art of governance from the level of hooliganism that it has degenerated to.
Yes. Very, very well said. Because at the end of the day, what we need to be thinking about is, what does this mean for Barbados? Where do we go from here? What is this saying to Barbadians about the way that we are governed? But let me bring back Mr. Lewis in this conversation. Mr. Lewis, and reminding viewers that we've left this time for you to call. Okay, don't just be lazy listening. You want to listen to us? We want to hear from you too. We want to hear from you too. This is one place, Miss McClean and others. You can talk your talk, and nobody gonna fire you. We're not going to do a Senator Haynes on you. All right. Um, but let me go to Mr. Lewis on that issue of Senator Haynes. Now, I know that Senator Haynes, when she got up and she spoke in the Senate, that would have pushed your cause a little bit about Joe's River. And then when you get up to hear that the Prime Minister said she was asked and she accepted, to resign, meaning that she was fired. That's what I say she was. What are your thoughts about that, and the issues that she raised that are so similar to Joe's River? What does that tell you about what's happening in the country as it relates to the overdevelopment and where the Prime Minister is heading?
Well, those are two chickens that had no fear.
Mm.
You know, those are two chickens that had no fear. And certainly these individuals, Senator Haynes and Caddo, those individuals are well versed. They are well trained. They're very objective. They can speak their minds because, they have a conscience.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals otherwise are towing the line. They are scared of the axe. Even when I did a further analysis of that photo just now, there are four individuals there, and if I think
Actually,
of,
there's supposed to be five.
it's
Dave,
supposed
I
to be
sent you
five,
another picture in your WhatsApp. Yes,
yes,
go
yes,
ahead, Mr. Lewis.
but that was the first thing I looked at, right? Because when you started to play the video, to listen to the words, yes, but just let me look at the body language. The body language tells a whole lot. And if we divorce ourselves away from the individuals that are standing around the Prime Minister, just look at the Prime Minister. And if you got to compare that image to other images, compare that image to other images that you may recall, and you can see the fear that exists in the Prime Minister at this particular point in time. Let me say for the representative for St. Joseph, because technically speaking, it may be fair to conclude, that he is not in the departure lounge. He's taken off, because I was informed, on other occasions that, he's not around. We have now to speak to Mr. Braffett. So, he doesn't have a fear any longer of the axe, because he's on the other side of the fence. But if you have to look at the others who are looking to carry on in some portfolio, these folks are subject to an environment because of the despotic behavior. These folks now are now in fear. Now, don't look at the other one there, though. Look at the other one. Look at all of them. It speaks for itself. Forget the words, because we know how Carol was treated. We know how Senator Haynes, speaking from a clear conscience, just not looking for the term that we heard the other night, kickbacks. I have no interest in kickbacks. I'm not hand to mouth. I have an interest in this country, Barbados, and I will speak to the understanding that I'm looking forward for the interest of my country, not necessarily the interest of the Barbados Labour Party, but let me focus on the interest for my country, and the same thing goes for Carol. So I must say that at the end of it all, what has transpired here is no surprise to me. It was clearly evident from past programs that we would have had where we heard about kickbacks and all the above, that the environment wasn't one that the leader of the BLP, would entertain. So what transpired was predicted.
Hello?
And we knew it was coming.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for that observation. Very interesting observation there. But there's a caller on the line. Good night, caller.
Good night to all there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what I going off on a wild speculation here. What you have in particular with the minister that resigned, Carol,
Mm-hmm.
essentially what she's done has distanced herself from the pinnacle of power, which is the prime minister.
Yes. Can you hear him? Are you able to hear their caller?
Yeah,
Yes,
hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
Right. She has distanced herself from the prime minister, who've got enormous influence and power in Barbados. The question is, why has she done this? I believe, I quite like blind elder, so to speak. Let me say this up front. I'm 86 years old, so I've been around
Another
a long
80
time.
somebody. Oh my Lord, Shaquani.
Pardon?
Another 80. I love the seniors. Go ahead. I'm just smiling.
Well, I would encourage to call because I call because you encourage the seniors to call.
Ah,
So
yes.
I would do that.
Yes.
Because I retired from everything, but I decided I would give my version of what I want, interpretation
Yes, sir.
of what I've seen. Let me tell you, going back far, I saw politics in Barbados back as a boy, 13-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy, saw Grantley Adams and the Queen Sparks, Steve Shedd, D.D. Garner, who was my favorite politician way back then. I saw politics in Jamaica. I used to live in Jamaica, beautiful place, from 1959 to 1962. So I saw Norman Manley during the process of the West Indian Federation and that the referendum. I was there in it, standing up very close to Norman Manley talking. I saw all of that. Saw politics in Canada, lived in Canada, saw politics in England. So I got a sort of experience. There is always in politics a struggle in political parties for power. Just make one simple point. I want somebody may pick it up. Carol, I believe, listening to her, so when I encountered her once, and that was in 2018, when the government restructured government debt and all kinds of things like that. They had a meeting where she was on the panel at the church in Welch's Road, that Wesley Holiness Church. I went there that night and I met her and so forth. And obviously, I was defending the position that you should not restructure. And says you should not do that to old people, those who had investments and so on. Anyway, under the impression I got, they are listening to her. Here is a woman of superior intelligence. As I told you, I went around long. I listened to people and able to interpret whatnot. And I got the impression that she was an authentic lady. The question here for me, I'm going to tell you something this is now. I personally believe, I told you I went around long. I believe Mayor Mortley is overrated. I'm telling you. I'm not going to say in this particular. I would come on her on another time on the Pan-African issue. I understand recently she said that she's the daughter of Africa. What daughter of Africa? She has never demonstrated Pan-Africanism, and the party that she represented was anti black nationalism. Sir Henry Ford. You don't talk evil of the dead anyway. He said it, at one point he would not, because the Pan-Africanists were pushing black nationalism. He said he would. He perceived that as racism. Let's forget that part. Getting back now, the cattle. I think cattle is superior in intellect, so she can't be around me more. And what I also believe, I have no evidence that there is a power struggle in that BLP. And who is leading that struggle? Who is going to who's going to take over from Mayor Morley? It's Carol. Mayor knows that. So therefore, Carol will distance herself from Mayor. Why has she distanced herself from Mayor? We don't know if she has information about Mayor that Mayor, which it might be derogatory, or which would be bad, or whatever, good, whatever. But it seems that on principle, I'm leaving. Is it economic theory? Is it philosophy? Is it what? Is it a question of ethics? Is it a question of morality? Only Cabinet can answer that. And she owes it to the Barbadian public to come and specifically say if it is policy, if it is morality, if it is ethics, if it is religion, if it is Islam, if it is Christianity, or whatever you want to put it. That the onus is now on cattle to come, because I believe in 6 months' time that we going to have a change in leadership. I tell you, it went wrong. I can't demented yet. There's going to be a change in leadership, and cattle is going to take over that leadership. That's all I have to say.
Wow. Interesting perspective. Very interesting.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. A lot to think about. Thank you. Let me just bring Shaquani in this conversation here. Shaquani, you know, and I'm loving that I'm going to you. This gentleman is 86, and you're the youngest here, or 84. What do you think about what he's saying, that he's perceiving that there's a power struggle in the BLP? What are your thoughts about that?
I think there will always be a power struggle. You cannot, well, they cannot, the leadership that is currently there cannot stay there forever. At some point in time, somebody will have to take over.
Mm-hmm.
They, amongst themselves, will have to decide who is the next leader or leaders to emerge. But for that to happen, you must give people wings. With the current set of people that are the ministers, they're not showing us any real rise of who will determine or who will become a leader. So we don't know who it would be, because at this point in time, they're all being overshined by the prime minister. And for that reason, they will have difficulty with giving the public of Barbados, I guess, the belief that they can do it. When we look at it, there's not a lot of them that we can say, well, we can see what they have done in their ministry. And because of that, Barbadians do not feel confident, thinking that a reshuffle will help them gain more confidence. I want to tap back quickly to the new, I don't even know what to say, the new Minister of Education, but he's not the Minister of Education. But one of the things I recognize, even though his portfolio may be, I guess, mainly diplomatic, they now announced that he might be potentially taking over for Edmund Hinkson. And I feel like that was an opportunity to put him in the limelight to speak more, because when you are in the sector where you speak on education, you are frequently in the limelight. So I feel like that was an opportunity that they used to put him there. It may not work out in the best for them. We now have to wait and see what he will do. But for me, it feels like it was purposeful. And
Yes.
that's why he was placed there, with all the issues currently going on with education.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, one of the young persons who was on earlier said that they believe that he might be the one they're grooming as you know, in the future. We don't know, but the point is that the caller felt. Let me just bring Mrs. Corbin in here, Miss Corbin, really quickly, because I have a call on that, a real sharp. What are your thoughts, Mrs. Corbin, about the caller saying that there might be a power struggle within the BLP? That's what he's perceiving. What are your thoughts about that?
Uh, I believe there is, and we have seen as the leader of opposition did say that that's their business. Yesterday, my husband and I, before we heard the announcement, we were in discussion about what's happening in Barbados, our usual discussion, and we looked at the considerations, the things that could happen to cause a shift, a shift nationally and politically in terms of governance. And the last consideration, not necessarily in priority, order of priority, we said an implosion. Both of us said it at the same time. And that's what's happening. We are seeing not only cracks, but an implosion, a greater implosion is about to happen. And may speak briefly to
Yes,
the
very
Miss,
brief because I have a caller on. Okay. Yeah.
yes, about Miss Cattle. I would have taught Miss Cattle Marsha when she was in class 2. We shared a classroom together and we exchanged, her teacher and myself, we would exchange the teaching of subject matter. Miss Cattle was in class 2, that would be the 8 to 9 age group in 1985. Back then, we always knew that she was um, had qualities that were in which she could assert herself. At 8 and 9, she would dig her feet in and dare to challenge you on what she thought it should be or what you would have said to her. She was always that type of person to the point of being stubborn. She would stand in front of you and just not respond to you if she felt that she was being unfair, if she felt you weren't being fair, if she felt she wasn't given a chance to express herself. So she was always that type of person. And as I said, her parents, both mother and father, were sticklers for high standards and morals, very strong Christians. So I am not surprised. In fact, you would have heard me say on this forum when we were discussing the cybercrime bill that I am, at times, I was disappointed with Miss Cattle and the position she would take and the trends that I saw in terms of her conduct. She began to be a mini Kurt Humphrey and behave with a degree of arrogance. It was creeping in. And
Yes.
I always looked for the Miss Cattle, the Marsha that I knew.
You knew when
And,
she was a little girl.
and I am glad that she stood up this time around. And again, she has shown that I represent a person larger and bigger and of more importance than you, Madam
Yes.
Prime Minister.
Yes,
I am
excellent, Rose. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. We needed to hear that. Let's hear from the caller. Good night, caller.
Good night, Marcia. Good night, panel.
Welcome to the Marcia Week show. Great to have you.
Thank you. The whole cattle and the shuffling, reshuffling, I don't have a lot to say on that because I'm still trying to get over the shock. But what I do want to say is in relation to what the Prime Minister said about the new Minister of Finance. I have two questions.
Mhm.
Was it said before it was announced today that he was going to be the new finance minister?
I don't
Can
understand
anybody
the
answer that
question.
question?
Ask the question again.
Wait, was it announced before? Was it said before that the new minister, I don't remember his name right now, was going to be the finance minister, or was it just made in a statement of him presenting the budget
You mean
next
Ryan
Monday?
Strawn? Ryan Strawn.
Right,
So,
right. When strong, was it announced before?
okay. So yes. What's the next question? You have another question?
And second one, my biggest concern, our prime minister loves money. She has been the finance minister from 2018. To just simply give another person that role and say she's giving somebody a chance to, operate in that role doesn't sit well with me. It says to me that there's something afoot.
Mm-hmm.
My question is what?
Interesting. Okay, so hang on there, caller. Miss McClean or anybody can answer this question about Ryan Strawn.
I was trying to check my understanding, unless, and I haven't heard anything changing. Remember, the prime minister has a whole battery of ministers of and ministers in. And the minister of is what I would call the substantive minister. And I haven't heard her say otherwise. I was trying to Google it as the caller was speaking, but my understanding is the prime minister continues to be minister of finance, and Minister Strawn is the minister in
the minister of finance.
Yeah, so I will
caller-
check it, and if I see something differently, I would let you know.
Yeah, that's my understanding too, Miss McClean. So is this very similar to the Minister of Culture is the Prime Minister, and then
Minister in is
right, and so right, do you have a minister in, in the whatever, some weird something, but yeah. Your next question. Anybody wants to tackle the next question? Did you remember the next question?
No, I don't. I think you should leave that one alone.
Okay, the second question.
Yeah, the part of what she said might be misunderstood.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So I can say, like someone said before, that a prime minister does not deliver bad news.
Well, that is my thinking, but not that prime minister doesn't. This one doesn't. Other prime ministers have delivered whatever news they had to deliver. But the record will show that the prime minister does not deliver bad news. If you go back to the many press conferences and so on, when we had the period of COVID, so
we wait for it.
Yeah.
We wait for it until then.
Yeah. Somebody. You mean? Thank you, caller. Thanks for calling. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Okay.
There's something that I was thinking. I said it's so funny. I mean, the prime minister has so many. The last time we checked, I think there were 7 ministries that she's minister of. If I'm not mistaken, somebody could correct me. But the last time that we did a count, I think it's probably 7 or more ministries. And I was thinking today, why she didn't reshuffle herself away, Mr. Lewis, from the planning and development. That's quite interesting. I want to ask a question. I don't know. This is usually a casual question, but Miss McClean is here, who's been on the in government for a number of years. Have we, for a prime minister to be minister to have planning and development?
It's standard. That typically has fallen on the prime ministers. What the prime minister has done is change the rules. The legislation has changed somewhat, and in terms of the process of approvals, etc. But that normally would fall under most prime ministers in recent years would have held that portfolio. But as I said, when you look at the legislation and the process of approvals, etc., changes were made, right? So I was looking here, Marcia. The Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, National Security, the Public Service. Then, of course, we had things like Water Authority, added on culture, So the Prime Minister's portfolio has been enlarged, it's been expanded significantly since she has become Prime Minister. And it really and truly it's an interesting mix. But if I could, Marcy, if you don't have a call, I want to say something about Senator Crystal Haynes and what normally happens, because I've heard a lot, but I think in looking at what has transpired, I do not understand why. There was a reason given, and I call it finessing. You have to present something that is palatable, but is that really, the basis for which a decision was taken? Now, in the normal scheme of things, before political parties or the government and the opposition go to parliament, whether it's the House or Senate, there are parliamentary group meetings. And the purpose of those meetings, the purpose is to make decisions on how you will debate.
Mhm.
At that occasion, people will say, look, I have to speak from my conscience.
Mhm.
Okay? And there are times, so you call it taking the whip off, because the notion is that there's somebody who keeps you in line and whatever, and you toe
Yeah.
the particular line. But there are issues, say, for example, something like casino gambling,
Mhm.
right? That would be a classic example of where MPs or senators will say, I have to speak according to my conscience.
Mhm.
And so let's say, and so you will speak to your conscience, and if it is something that you totally cannot tolerate, you would leave. But normally there is room to do that. Now, a problem could have arisen if, for example, and remember that Senator Haynes did not vote. She absented herself after putting on the record her position, which I think was important. She felt strongly enough the issue is sufficiently important, not only to her and to people of St. James or whatever, but to Barbados, to people who visit this country, and she felt compelled to speak her mind. Now, she absented herself after. So in essence, because let's say, for example, there was a vote and she voted against it and it was defeated, then she would have gone against her political party. She did not do that. She said, however, I cannot be silent or I cannot support. And that, as far as I know, is allowed. As formerly the government business, these were decisions where people would say, I have to speak on this. My opinion is different from most people, and you're given that freedom. So my concern was, what was so wrong to have to remove her? Because you can tell me McClean place. Why didn't they take out Senator Charles Morris? He's an older person. His contribution, well, I will say a little about his contributions, but I believe that he would not have been missed as much, except to be sitting in Parliament. If you listen, you would hear the kind of contributions he makes, the interventions. We were talking about listening in silence just now. I wouldn't say any more on that. So really and truly, to my mind, there was no reason why she should have been penalized. And I would have to be told by somebody, by herself, that even then, that decision was not necessary. Let me put it that way, because for an issue of important as that, people should have been given the leeway to speak their minds and express to the public their personal positions. As I said, the line would be drawn when it came to vote, because at the end of the day, remember, she's a government senator and they're going to Parliament to make decisions. Now, when a piece of legislation is brought, if they do what is normally done, you should know the outcome, and the positions of your parliamentary group. So I really don't understand, but again, I think it's consistent with the leadership of the day.
Yes, but what I'll say is this, that as someone is pointing out, the same way that Mr. Thorne had the right to remove Trisha Watson, Miss Motley has the right to remove Senator Haynes. I think what we're missing here is the public we're looking on and we're saying, whoa, there was somebody who stood up for the people of Barbados, stood up for whole towns, not just whole town, because it represented what she said represented something to somebody like like Mr. Lewis here,
Mm-hmm.
when she stood up, and it meant something to us. And to see that's all she did, and that was her freedom of expression and speech was punished.
Conscience.
And that is
Freedom
what
of
we are
conscience.
talking about. It's circumstances. And the fact that and I thought, listening to her, it was not, she did not demonize the party. She was very graceful in her presentation, and in her I thought, and the fact that now I know she didn't even vote against it. She just wanted to bear her conscience.
And you
And
do that. It's
I think
important.
I think for us we understand Miss Motley has the power to do it and the right to do it, but it's very alarming. It's very alarming. That is what we are saying. It seems like freedom of expression is being thing. I think you were saying something, Nigel. Go ahead.
Yes, I think the dismissal, I know I said dismissal of Senator Haynes was an act of vindictiveness. She could not tolerate what is happening to Barbados. Her conscience remains alive and well. She spoke from her heart. She spoke in her conscience. She stood up for Barbados. And you mean to tell me that we have such a despotic leader who thinks that she has the right to run amok in Barbados and do as she please, that she embarrass, humiliate, and acted so vindictive against someone who spoke from conscience? And are we Barbadians going to continue to tolerate that kind of madness? Are we?
Very, very good question. I want to use this quickly just to say to everyone that on the 9th of March, we are going to be in St. Peter at Gibbs Gully. And the banner that we're calling for the saving of Gibbs Gully. I was there yesterday, did a full walkthrough of the gully, and and saw the plans and everything. And we are going to be staging a barbecue there. It's going to be real fun barbecue there, roast bread food, and you're still going to have your fish and your chicken and so on. And that's going to happen on the 9th of March. It's a Sunday. We're starting though at 2 o'clock. And the reason we're starting at 2 instead of 3, because if you come at 3, you're going to miss a lot. At 2, we're starting to serve do the barbecue at 2, and then at about 2:30 or so, we're going to do a walk through in the gully. Okay, so you wear proper shoes, wear your sneakers. It's not treacherous. I've been there yesterday. Not treacherous at all. Anybody could be part of it. We saw seniors at Joe's River that had their stick and everything, and they did fine. So you can come wear flat shoes. You can wear sneakers or slippers, with a grip, and we're going to do a walkthrough. And then at 3 o'clock, we're going to start officially. All right. Doing the speeches and so on and so forth. So come on out. And this is come in the name of all of these historians that are, we're losing Carl Watson. We may lose Trevor Marshall, Pedro Shepherd, come in the name of Senator Haynes, who stood up for these kinds of issues.
Not Pedro Shepherd, Pedro Welch.
Yes, Pedro Welch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pedro Welch, yes. If Dave could put up the picture, that if you check the Dave, can you put that picture up? Yeah. And I want to say to everybody, if you see this poster anywhere, please share it. If you see it anywhere, share it. I think that what we want to do is celebrate. We want to celebrate her courage. Do you know it took a lot of courage to do that?
Mhm.
Indeed.
It took a lot of courage, Mr. Lewis,
Oh
to do
yes.
that because she knew the possibilities. And that's why you had Senator John Rogers, who was begging for her because he knew what was going to happen. And
Mhm.
as he said, that the Senate is the place to do that, to have that kind of debate, honest debate on an issue. And she did, and I've never met her, but I just still want to celebrate her. I want to celebrate her. I think that yeah, I think that that is very, very very important. But we are going, I'm not hearing any more calls. I thought I had to go extra time because we would need for calls. But people, guys, we need some more Senator Haynes to speak. Get up and to speak. Don't be afraid to call in. I wish I had heard some people from the diaspora as well. Yeah, where are the people from the diaspora? Come on, guys. Let's get a little of the courage of Senator Haynes. A lot of us don't want to do anything. People are scared for their jobs. Why should we live in a situation like this, where people are scared of their jobs? They're scared of victimization. She was victimized. So what is that? What is that saying to Barbadians? What are Barbadians going to do? Yeah. Okay.
Marcia,
Yes, go ahead, Nigel, and we're making our rounds now. Everybody, half a minute, with our final words tonight for the night. Go ahead, Nigel.
yes. My question is, what really is the role of governance? And shouldn't the government be concentrating on the full process of social construction and nation building? Shouldn't we be concentrating on those issues rather than, I mean, yes, the economics are important, but I think there was a former prime minister who said Barbados is more than an economy, right? And I think the governance should be focusing more on social construction and nation building. And I think if we can concentrate on those areas, I think we will be able to build a stronger and a better country. And I think, and finally, I think the time has come for parliamentarians to be trained in the art of governance before they are elected or before they are assigned ministries. It
Mm-hmm.
is not about the party anymore. It is about a nation. It is about leading a nation forward towards true development. And I think all parliamentarians, rather than becoming ministers because they are a member of a political party, they should be trained for such office. And I think finally, um,
Yeah,
whenever,
finally.
yes, I think the prime minister or the office of prime minister, when a person is elected to prime ministership, that person should resign the role of party leader because too much confusion arises there. Prime minister and party leader, that should be separated.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that comment. Mrs. Corbin, half a minute. Can you close off in half a minute?
Muting. Back to where it started. Thank you. I'm asking for an explanation of what is now the Ministry of Educational Transformation. I am wondering also, and Maxine, I don't know if I missed it, if they had the estimates for education presented already. Who will sit in the well now to account for the expenditure, for the monies voted for, spent, and came back for 2024 to 2025? Who will give an account of that? Will Miss McConnell be brought back in to speak to those matters? This will bring us now to what Nigel persists in asking about good governance. Or will Mr. Blackman, will this be his first assignment then to speak to something he's in part of? What will happen? So I'm asking about accountability. Who will represent the ministry, the former Ministry of Education as we knew it? Will it become McConaughey? And will someone call a press conference and explain to the Barbadian public why have they troubled the heart of our nation? Education, not roads, not infrastructure. Why have they troubled education, disbanded it, and not come to the people to explain of that intention? It is not decent.
Yes.
Tell us what is the ministry of transformation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me go to Shaquani. Shaquani, what are your final thoughts this evening?
Thank you very much again, Marcia. I was on the Ministry of Education's page on Instagram, and I was looking over some of the things that they posted. And one of those photos was a photo of the current minister. Well, we don't know what his real position is at this time is Mr. Blackman. And one of the things he put at his caption, because he collaborated with them, was that it may take him a couple days or a day or a month to get his head like wrapped around the situation for that industry. And to me, that is the beginning of a problem. If you are identified as a person who can get the situation with education back on track, why do you now need to get updated on what is going on with it? You should already come in knowing what the problems are, identify them, and have solutions starting from day one, because they selected you to replace a person who already was experiencing difficulty. So if you now have to spend time to get up to date with the issues and come up with solutions, you are in a worse position.
Yeah,
So my
I
question
understand.
is
Yeah.
that did they really think through this switch around, or he just happened to be pulled out on a whim and placed there? Because if that is the case, we have a bigger problem on our hand. We have issues that are urgent and needs addressing right away, and we do not have time for him to be caught up, because he
Mhm.
needed to be have selected to have be in a position to deal with it right away. So if he cannot handle it, we need to put somebody else that would be able to get everything started out as soon as possible.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shaquani. And let me go to Mr. Lewis. Any thoughts as we close, sir?
Yes, there was a show sometime back, maybe I think the section we had in Joseph. And on the morning of that show, a lady called me and she said, Mr. Lewis, you're going to Joseph today. I want you to be careful when you go there. My phone just rang and I answered, and I can hear that the lady is a older lady. She said, my name is Trotty. On the evening of that show, she called again and says, Mr. Lewis, are you all right? And I was a kind of shock with the first call in the morning, then the call in the night. The person called, be careful. Called back the evening and said, Mr. Lewis, well, I listened to the show and it's nice to know that everything went fine and that you're back home. Last week, that lady came to me when I was at hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time I saw her. 75 years old. She said her name is Trotty. So when I listened to the 86-year-old tonight, knowing very well that there's a great sector of our society where wisdom prevails,
Yes.
where wisdom prevails. It is a joy to know that. I mean, to some extent, I was concerned that here's a 75-year-old calling my house to question, Victor, be careful of this gentleman, and then to call back to find out if I'm okay, then to meet me. Before I got out of the vehicle, good on Sunday, this lady came and hugged me. This is the person, Trotty, 75 years old. And to listen to the 86-year-old saying that there's something in cattle that he saw it, I would like to think that there will be a challenge sometime along the road between Chad Blackman and cattle as far as their intellectual potential is concerned and where they are focusing. But wisdom will prevail. The long talk is coming to an end.
Yes, wow, excellent, excellent. Just before Miss McClean bring the curtain down for us this evening, I want to say to the viewers that when we arrived at Whole Town to have that wonderful roadside parliament, there was that's a woman. She's 75 years old, and as far as I remember, she was there before we got there, and we are the organizers. And she was there before we got there, and she told us she took a bus. I think she took two buses actually to get to Whole Town. She's 75.
Yes.
And she was helping us to move chairs. I kept telling her, don't, you can't lift that up. She said, let me try. If I can't, I'm not going to put on, and I want to just big up the seniors. You don't know what you're doing to me. It's giving me life, I tell you, to see the seniors, and I just want to, if you're listening, she tells me she misses no show. And when she got home, she took the bus, she got home, and then she called me.
Wow.
To make sure that I got home.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remembered that as you were saying, man, to the seniors, over to Miss McClean. I had to put that in.
Very quickly, all the Barbadians are always typically on time. If they're going to be an hour early, they prefer to be an hour early than 10 minutes late. Shaquani, newsflash. The unfortunate reality is, and this is why I cannot understand, well, no, I understand why I would say that a reshuffle at this time is not planned. It was forced. A reshuffle will create disruption. And it isn't only the minister. He will need more than a month. I hear him talking. He will need more than a month because I think he has a lot to learn. But you're breaking the ministry in pieces, into two pieces. So what's going to have to happen? They got to decide which piece goes where and all of that. But I wouldn't. Nigel, I am happy to say that this document here, report of the Parliament Reform Commission, I got my copy today. And I don't think they can kill me for this. I don't know what they plan to do. Training of parliamentarians is a recommendation inside of there, right? I think you mentioned the issue of need to be trained in the art of governance and so on. And this was one of the things that we put forward as a recommendation. Rose, you will not hear anything on education because it was not included in the list of the ministries for the second year running to be considered. And the ministry last year, they had health, because between the Ministry of Health and Education, they're the two largest elements, the two ministries that get the single largest pieces of the budget. But I want to say, in relation to this whole thing, we talked about the reshuffle, but you know what the Prime Minister stuck in there? BERT 3. Let me count. BERT 3, 1, 2, 3. And beyond my comment about her being afraid of taking on the leader of the opposition, I believe that what is coming is going to be tough, and it's going to be a lot of bad news. She will not be the bearer of bad news. I happened to run into the governor of the Central Bank yesterday coming down the steps of Parliament. I guess he had a meeting with the Prime Minister, and this is probably part of the discussion about BERT 3. That is what Barbadians have to look out for. There's been a lot of borrowing, and they're going to have to service those debts. I believe it's going to cost over $1 billion a year to service the foreign debt. The economists will help us to understand. But just tighten your belt, put on your seatbelts, because we have to tighten our belts and let us look forward. Well, we got to hear what's happening. So we are, this has created a whole set of uncertainty, adding to the additional problems. But my focus is, what will that third iteration of the IMF arrangements mean for us?
Yes. Thank you so much, Ms. McClean. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to those who started out with us this evening. We had Don Leacock and Senator Ryan Walters. There was Jan Sutter, who is from that community, Brighton, St.
Brighton.
Michael, and
Yes.
having some real challenges there. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, Shaquani. Thank you, Rose Corbin. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you, Maxine McClean. I'm hoping I'm not forgetting anybody. Our A team. This is our A team. Thank you so much, everybody, for being part of it. All of you viewers, thank you for joining in. And we are going, please make preparations to be at Gibbs Gully Roadside Parliament, Sunday, March 9th. It's 2 p.m. We're preserving our land and heritage, and it is about saving Gibbs Gully. You need to be there early for the barbecue. Barbecue is at 2 o'clock, and then we're going to have 3 o'clock. We start with our speeches, okay? Thank you so very much, and God bless you. I think Dave has something that he wants to play on the way out. Go ahead, Dave.
Has happened among us, about which it is difficult to speak, but about which it is impossible to remain silent. Today I'm breaking in silence. But that's what I say for the record. I was patient, but I have children and grandchildren that will have to live in this country. And my voice will be heard, and my voice will be read, will be raised. And those who are convincing me, Motley, that she can just ride roughshod, that there are those of us in Barbados who are going to stand up and that she cannot ride roughshod over us, because the record has to be straight. Now, I don't have to be forming any institutions or other things to be speaking in the manner in which they feel it should speak in this country. I'm speaking to you now in the name of my children and my grandchild. I want to live in a country where there's freedom of expression. I want to live in a country where no despot can feel that they should hold the destiny of my children and my grandchild in their hands. And that Mayor Molly is a menace. She's a menace because she's a despot. She's a menace because she's a despot, believes that she has a right to be a despot. She would try to be a despot with me. Motley unilaterally, with the support again of a small group, decided that the will of the majority should not prevail. There is nobody in Barbados politics, and certainly in the Labour Party politics, who has expressed themselves more openly and freely. Not Motley. You seem not to recall that Mayor Motley once went to a national consultation, and without the approval of the party, committed the Barbados Labour Party to a policy that we were staggered with, that we were going to commit ourselves to distributing condoms in prison. I don't think you quite appreciate what peril that caused the Barbados Labour Party. Mayor Motley is listening to Peter Wickham, and that is going to be spoken about in some detail too, because of a tale of two poles. Like the people of Barbados, based upon the Wickham poll, don't want the party to be the government, but that they want her to be Prime Minister of Barbados. That is the most dangerous doctrine. And that the media itself, we believe, has to sit down and discuss, are we going to allow something like this to stand in Barbados? Having given my life to the Labour Party, that I saw it being reduced. It has lost its way, and I had a duty to say so. It has lost its soul. And it said then that as far as I was concerned, the Barbados Labour Party had become no more than the institutional plaything of a megalomaniac. And today go further, because all that has happened has come from that point of view. But sadly, the Barbados Labour Party is now allowing itself to become no more than a cushion to bear the imprint of the object that is sitting upon it. And I use the word object rather than the preferred three-letter word that we use. And I really am not going to keep quiet about it anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, my lordy. Well, good night. Good night. This is where we say
Good
good night.
night.
Yeah,
Good night.
let's sum it up. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yes,
See you on
bye-bye.
Friday.
Everybody.